Stations. An EVE Online podcast. We are ready to go. As you can hear, people are talking. Today, we're going to actually switch it up and talk about one topic, and that is the huge fight that happened in Wormhole space, Hydra. And we will meet all the players that participated in that. And to do most of the hosting today, I'm going to rely on Keskora, a friendly face to the show. How are you doing, Keskora?
I'm hanging in there. It's been a long weekend. Not
a little
sleep deprived, but I got my coffee, so I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Sitting in the ignorant aisle is Tiberius, along with me.
Ignorant aisle? I almost take offense. Hey.
I'm sure actually you know more than I do. And Keskora, do you want to introduce the players that were involved?
Sure. So I have a few people who are involved in this weekend that I've invited on to join us here. I got a couple from different sides. We have Viktor from Interhole Revenue Services. I'm so sorry, it's really early. ShekelSquad. I always call people by their corp names, and having to use the formal alliance name seems kind of really odd in some ways. So welcome to the show. Looks like
who was that?
That was Viktor. Could you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello, everybody.
There we go. All right. Then they were on the attacking side. Shekel was the bigger group that was involved with that, along with Wholesale and Whole Control and Pirate and Vendetta Mercenary Group and a collection of other groups. Am I forgetting anybody who is on that group that you want to bring up?
Yeah, those were the main groups involved.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the battle report is pretty substantial for this, so trying to get all the groups involved is really kind of nuts. So we don't see this kind of fight in Wormhole space every day. So then on the defending side, the battle took place in my home. I'm with Pos Party, or POSP, as we tend to call ourselves, the Ember Alliance. It was our home. We call it Hydra, and we were the main defenders. Our allies in this were of Sound Mind, who I have Ting on today. You can say hello.
Hi, I'm Ting. I'm the lead diplo of Sound Mind, formerly the executor, and I don't know what else you want to know about us right now.
We'll have plenty of time to get into some of the nitty-gritty with who all these entities are here. But then the other group I had, it was really heavily involved, is TD Sin, the Dark Space Initiative with Scary Wormhole People, which we have ExookiZ here with his fantastic Kraken and flag and everything. You guys might recognize him from FanFest. He's presented there for several years now on Wormholes, and he is the leader of that alliance.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I've been going to FanFest a while and doing the presentation thing. Still waiting to find out if I get to do that this year, but if you've watched most of the player presentations at FanFest, you'll have seen me in my cape before. So
then finishing out the group I have here, from our friends, we have Sin Alarma, who is with Exit Strategy. They are an Australian time zone group mostly, who came in to help out as well. So welcome, Sin.
Yeah, g'day. Yeah, so CEO, one of the cops at Exit Strategy, and generally the best looking in the Alliance.
I can't vouch, but I'll take your word on that. Then also in comms, I have my lead FC, Valasius, a good friend of mine. He is one of the people I relied on really heavily for this op and has some great combat insight. So welcome, Val, as well.
Hello, everyone.
So wormhole sieges are, as I mentioned, something that you really don't see that often to this scale in wormhole space. You'll hear about content smashes or citadel smashes or staging content structures and POS destruction, but something of a full eviction force is not an everyday kind of thing, and it requires usually a lot of planning, a lot of people involved for a lot of different reasons. So, Victor, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit on kind of how you guys got everything together for this and how you got going and some of, the things that fell into place for you guys with this.
I mean, one of the main things was, of course, the planning of how we were going to get all the Mercenaries in to your home initially. Because some people may not know, Wormholes have a mass limit, and Mercenaries, being battleships, are pretty heavy, so you can only get so many in at once. So that was one of our main worries, how we like the timing and getting people ready for the initial staging. And then, of course, it was basically just talking to all the corps involved, all the alliances involved, and getting everybody in the right ships at the right time, ready, staged in a MAR system, most Wormhole people usually use for staging this kind of stuff, because it's the most central trade hub. And just getting everybody ready, getting scanners in, getting seeds in, getting as much intel and you guys' defense as possible, timers, all that kind of stuff. And then just getting ready for D-Day, so to speak.
Well, that's interesting. Can I interrupt? You said that Amar was the most central trade hub to Wormholes?
Yeah, with a Mars space, it's so big that when you spawn a wormhole leading into high sec, the chances of it being closer to a Mar are higher because there are just more systems that are closer to a Mar than to the other trade hubs.
I've heard that wormhole space is kind of partially obscures known space. Is that true? Because they're not right on top of each other?
I don't really know. I mean, technically, if you look at a map, I'm really not kind of sure where we would even exist. I feel like we almost are kind of like in between, like we're kind of in a separate layer.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. But somebody showed me that if they map the wormholes, they're actually a little bit off. Like there's an overlap, but they're not completely in between and stuff. So I was wondering if like Amar sat in the middle of that offset or something. Anyway,
so you're slight interjection on that one. You're talking about that project that a bunch of players did, because when you put down pos sticks and things like that in wormholes, and you looked at them at the asset list, you could see how far they were in light years. And a lot of people did very clever things and a bit of trigonometry and worked out where the actual ExookiZ systems were in comparison. Lore-wise, it's meant to be a completely different galaxy universe altogether. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can't jump between them anyway. There's no ability to light a Sino within range. There's no ability to, basically wormholes spawn randomly in the class of system they're supposed to go to: high sec, low sec, null sec, or another wormhole system.
And so direction doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. And just the fact that the entrances are always moving and they can spawn in different places of the universe. So you get like some holes that are bigger than others and things like that. It puts on a massive logistical problem when you're trying to move big fleets to evict another group out of a wormhole in. Whereas, in normal space, you just light the cyanide or shove them all through a gate. Here, you've got to wait for the right hole that can take the right amount of mass. You might need multiple holes, and if one of them collapses, you have to go find more holes. It's incredibly complicated.
We all have wormhole mapping tools. Every wormholer, like if you have a wormhole corp, you cannot survive without a mapper. There's just no way. And a lot of people use different ones. We have, everything. There's a whole bunch out there. There's Pathfinder and Siggy and Vippy, I think, are the three most commonly. And Tripwire. Oh my God. Sorry again. I'm kind of running on steam here. We have our own personal one even that our corp mate built. And the way that they're always laid out is either in like some sort of chain or a web. Most wormholers tend to have like their home system as like the center of their universe, because everything that you do is kind of based out of your home. So especially with these evictions, when you get hit in your home, it's a big deal because that is your everything. And, a lot of people might know this too. There's no asset safety in wormholes. So when your structures go boom, they drop literally everything. If this counts for people who've been AFK for a long time and just left all their stuff in your citadel and it's been there for like 2 years, that stuff drops. All the corp hangers, everything, every item hanger, cans, it's nuts.
That's pretty brutal.
It's brutal, but it creates a really good incentive also to want to hit these citadels because the loot pinata that will come out of it is going to be pretty substantial. And we knew when coming into this, as soon as we saw like a big siege fleet in our home, we knew that our main Fortizar was going to be it was going to be big. We knew it was going to be big. It's been up for 2 years. And I was even talking about it just like a few weeks ago of like, you know, we probably should like unanchor that sometime so we can like shake all the loose change out of it. Like, you know, pull all the quarters out of the couch cushions and like see what we find.
Oh, really? Is that a thing?
One of our most profitable operations was when we moved out of C4 space into C5 space. We wound up anchoring all of our structures, and when we did, oh, the loot spew. I think it was like 100, 150 bill that came out of that C4 because we'd been living there forever.
Well, and I mean, Viktor, I think you guys were only in your first C5 for like a few months, and when you guys moved, wasn't that like humongous too?
I wasn't part of ShekelSquad yet when we moved to the Wormhole we currently live in, so I have no clue, to be honest.
Okay, gotcha. But still, I mean, it's surprising how quickly people amass assets in wormholes, because you don't, you know, you might not get a good connection every day to just walk out and buy stuff. You know, if you're in low sec or null sec, you always know like how far it is to get to the market, and so you know like, okay, if I need to make a supply run, it's just, you know, these jumps and bam. But with wormholes, you never know. You could roll holes for hours and have nothing closer than like Solitude or Devoid to get to your market hubs. So when you have like a 2 from Jita, it's like, all right, bring in all things. And then it just amasses and you have just tons of stuff.
That counts for people that have left the game as well. So I remember once we unanchored a structure. Yeah, we'd been there for 18 months or so. But you know, you have people that join the group, they move heaps of expensive assets in, and then for whatever reason they stop playing. And that stuff, when you unanchor that thing or you blow it up, that's just going to drop. It's amazing what, like you said, people amass, and then when people leave that game, it just sits there.
And then you wind up spending hours looting it all and getting it secure.
Yeah, I mean, when a Citadel unanchors or pops, the cans just go everywhere, and they spawn anywhere from like 300 kilometers off the center point.
Or do they spawn, or do they do that drift thing that happened with ghost sites where they explode out?
No, they just spawn. So you like, okay. Whenever when our main forts are this weekend that popped. So to kind of back up, there's just so much that happened, you know. But basically, we had 4 Fortizars. Crazy Glue was the name of our main Fortizar. It was also the first one to come out of Timer.
Wait. Let me back you up just a bit. Talk about Hydra and making a home and who you guys are in C4 space and that kind of thing. Because like a lot of people don't know.
Got to
like,
set the scene.
Yeah, set the scene for us.
My knowledge of Wormhole people is literally I'm sitting there minding my own business in a null sec system, and suddenly my 2 raw cores are dead. That's it.
I can admit
that happens. Well, for, you know, there's a lot of systems in wormhole space. I mean, there's several hundred of each class of wormhole system, ranging from C1 up to C6. There's fewer C6 than the others, but there's a lot. Plus, there's shattered systems, which you can't anchor structures in. But a wormholer, like a real wormhole entity, their home system is going to be full of structures. It's going to be full of assets. It's going to be full of people, and it's going to have a lot of movement in it. So our home base system that we set up is a class 4 wormhole. It's got a C5 and a C2 static coming out of it. C4s have 2 statics, and we called it Hydra, partially because of the 2 statics, the 2 heads, you know, and also it has a blue sun, which is really cool looking. So we thought we wanted to go something watery or something. So most people name their wormholes because J-SIGs are boring. You know, it's just like random numbers. So every wormhole group that I know pretty much names their wormhole. And the big fights that, you know, in these big sieges, you kind of remember them based off of the hole they happen in. So ours is Hydra. We moved into this wormhole about 1.5 years ago, I believe. And we dropped Crazy Glue was our first Fortizar we dropped. And then we dropped 2 more a little bit later, and then a 4th one actually quite recently, just within like the last month or so. So and then we had a whole bunch of Aster houses. We had Athenors, we had Raytarus, we had a lot of structures in this system. It's quite a big system.
You put a price tag on that?
How many structures we have in our system?
Yeah, is it ridiculous to even ask that?
I mean, it's not just the structures, it's all the stuff in the structures.
Yeah, typically a Citadel is like what? Fortizar is like 20 bill, but then you shove easily 50, 100 bill of assets into there, so.
And we're a pretty big corp. I think character-wise, we're looking at like 470 in the corp. I mean, we got pretty big recently. We took in a couple smaller corps bridged into us, so we're quite sizable. So if each person has, you know, 10 bill in assets, being like conservative, that's a lot of stuff in that wormhole.
And that's unusual to be very big as a wormhole group. Is that right?
There's not a lot of our size. I mean, I think that all the groups here are pretty sizable groups. And, you know, usually if you can field, like, on an average evening, if you could field a 30-man fleet, I think that puts you in like a good size for Wormhole groups. Just by the nature of living in such a contained system, we can't fleet like hundreds of people all the time, just because Wormhole mass issues and logistics would be rough.
And living issues, right? Like, you get crowded, or is that not an issue?
That's not so much an issue, just because you can have now as many structures as you want. When you could have Poses and you had to have one per moon, you had to be more selective about the Wormhole that you moved into, because you had to make sure you had enough moons to supply all the people for your structures. But I mean, 30-man fleets on like an average evening are good, I think. For like that would put you in like a consistently good sized Wormhole group. The big groups can ping up to like 50 on an average night. And then if you are like really, really big and it's like a Saturday or something, you can ping up even like to 60 or something on just like an average ping.
So where do you fall in that scale?
We're probably in the kind of the middle tier, depending. Our group has a lot of people who are a little bit more casual in some ways, where they don't get to play as often as they'd like. So we have some people that like can only play on the weekends. So our pings are sometimes wildly inconsistent. We'll get like 50 people one evening, and then the next we can get like 12. So I think on average we tend to be in the 30 to 40 range, but it's hard to say. And it also doesn't count alts. Some people have more alts than others.
So there you are with all your stuff in your hole. Go ahead and continue from there.
Yeah, so it was, I believe, Wednesday evening. I was just getting off of work, and I got the ping that there was like 40 Mercurials in our home. And with a low-class Wormhole like ours, you can't put capital ships through it. You can only build them. So having a big fleet of Mercurials is kind of the go-to offensive doctrine for these kind of things. I'm sure someone else can kind of speak to the reason why the Mercurial is really good. I'm not the combat kind of person. I fly Logi.
I mean, the Mercurial, the Mercurial is really good for both offensive and defensive sieges, because it's really good at fighting on structures, because you have an incredible amount of range, so you can just ping around the structure grid. You can hit capitals from outside their range, that kind of stuff. They're also incredibly tanky and a huge amount of alpha, as you will have probably seen in like the last fight, who were just deleting subcaps of field one by one.
And they don't require
alpha.
They don't require capacitor to run, which is a major benefit when you have void bombs going off.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. So the Mercurial on the Slipnir, I mean, the alpha of that is amazing. No capacitor, and the range altogether is great. I mean, there are other systems that are better at one of those three, but all three combined is just amazing when you want to alpha things off the field.
Yeah, it's definitely due for the nerf that it's getting soon.
That's right, because it's coming soon. And you see, my group, I have some people that are really great at doing doctrines, and part of what I like about us is we try to break the mold sometimes and do something a little bit different. So we were trying a different fit for our home defense fleet, which was armor rattlesnakes, which at the time seemed like a really good call, but turned out to be not nearly as effective as we were hoping against such a big Mac fleet. Because the alpha, I mean, it was obscene. The amount of Mercurials that everyone was able to seed in so quickly was scary, quite frankly.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind here is that because of the fact that we're typically used to fielding 30 to 50 person fleets, like a big fight will be 50 versus 50. So we're not really used to working in large numbers. We're not really used to the idea of having so much alpha you can just delete ships off the field one after another and turn it into an attrition game.
Val, I think you wanted to pop up a little bit about the rattles.
Yeah, it's such a popular question on why we fielded these at all. So I want to go back to when we originally made the doctrine. And on a maximum form, we were looking at around 30 people in just subs. So in that kind of case, the only kind of Mercurial fleets we've been seeing evict people was around 70 to 80, back when the last Chancellors was evicted. So if we fielded just a Mac fleet from our subs, we would eventually lose critical mass to be able to shoot Mercurials at all, and then they could get transversal up. So in that kind of scenario, when we only have 30 subs, the rattles wouldn't really, or rather the max that we would have wouldn't really be all that useful. And we just never really converted up from like rattlesnakes to Mercurials when we got all these people. So that's kind of the reason on why we had the armor rattles. They also have pretty insane amount of EHP, like 255k, and also the most utility mids in order to tackle things to hold it down for just a cap blob of hot dreads and carriers. So that's like the reason why it was made. There was times when it was just horrendously useless, and also times when they actually caught reps when nothing else would. So there was just horrible parts about it and fantastic parts about it at the same time.
So yeah, I think the main issue with the armor rattlesnakes was simply that they did not have the range to compete with Macarials at range.
Yeah, like it's very clear. You guys wanted to be 100k pretty much the whole time, and you guys did a great job at doing that. And our basic strategy was to get it 0 as much as we can.
So that was Viktor from the opposition. You're part of the invading force, right?
Correct.
I have a question. Would it be fair to say that you guys in that whole Hydra were caught off guard?
Yeah. I mean, you always suspect that an eviction can happen. It's always a threat in wormhole space, and a lot of people say, you should never bring anything in the wormhole you're not afraid to lose, because it can happen anytime. But I was not suspecting such a scale as this, because I didn't factor in the high secers at all. Like when I think about people that could evict us, I think of the big groups, of which Shekel's one, Hard Knocks is one, Laserhawks is one, TD-Sen if you guys wanted to come at us. I mean it. But then having those extra people from high sec, it tipped it just over what I would have suspected. And
to be reasonable, even though the high sec mercs were only 20 or 30 people, it was the combination of Shekel working together with wholesale and whole control, right? We've known for a while that wholesale and whole control work together, that they field 70 to 100, but that extra set of people from Shekel, that extra set of high secers, that added up to 170, was it? Pretty big.
Yeah, the numbers got really big. I mean, I was not expecting a fleet like that kind of size. I mean, we have a defense doctrine, but I didn't expect it to be such a big force, honestly. And part of that is I think I also, in some ways, kind of underestimated our own size. I mean, like I said, we grew really fast recently, and I'm not really used to being such a big group, and so I didn't really think about what I could bring to bear either. And it definitely it was pretty impressive, the numbers that you guys were able to bring in.
Well, did you say who was actually coming at you? Was it because you said, I think earlier on I understood that it was wormhole groups, yes, but also high sec mercenaries were hired. Is that right?
To be fair, the high sec mercenaries were not hired, but high sec mercenaries were on our side.
Yeah, they work together.
Yeah.
Oh, they weren't hired. They were just convinced, or you guys have relationships with them?
Mainly, wholesale and whole control have good relationships with them, so they come along pretty often for their evictions, and this one was one of them.
So these high sec mercenaries are basically, they're all blue to each other, aren't they?
I don't know how their inner politics work, to be honest.
We'll do a different show on that, because I think that's kind of obscene. The mercenary groups that you can hire all.
I don't know if any of us can speak on that, on the high sec mercs at all.
We'll crack that nut another time, but yeah, okay.
Well, because wholesale are wormhole mercs too, and so I think that they have a pretty good I've seen them fly with other mercenary groups before as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so you're surprised, your home's expensive, you don't want to lose it. These guys have huge numbers of Macarials, which are especially effective in these C4 wormholes that are limited in mass. So caps are hard to bring in or impossible, but you have your own, you can build them in, and you have your own, but that's a defensive fleet. So tell us what happened.
Well, the big key with wormhole sieges is controlling the entrances and exits. Having hull control is the critical piece to being successful on either side. So when Shekel came in with their big fleet, that was pretty much the first thing they did, and they did it really well. And we tried to make a play at the very beginning to stop them from getting their initial fleet in, and it was not successful. We lost a good amount of stuff in that initial play. And you guys, I mean, your hole control was solid. It was really good. And so that kept us from getting a lot of reinforcements in. And we were pretty much with what we had in the hole was what we had.
We should back up a little bit and talk about the mechanics of hole control, though, for people that aren't familiar with it. Hole control the mechanic, not hole control the group. Yes, we're going to have to disambiguate those.
Yes.
So basically how hole control works is every wormhole has several statics, they call it, so it will permanently be connected to another wormhole of a specific class, and then you can scan those chains down and find like entrances from high sec or whatever. And hole control means basically that you have a fleet or whatever on those holes, you're ready to close them as soon as the enemy tries to put a scanner through to find an entrance, and they cannot contest that. So pretty much if you have hole control, there is no way they get more people in if you do it well. Well, you're free to get everybody in as you please. You have control over who gets in through those statics, and you roll off all other connections.
Yeah, so typically what you'll find is wormhole groups, either if they're trying to break a siege, they either try to contest the hole control to wrest back control so that they can bring in their friends, or they get their friends to rage roll, to cycle their static until their static matches the system under siege. So in this case, Keskora's folks were trying to break the hole control, and were not successful at doing that initially.
So what's interesting is, I always found this fascinating, that you hold a hole like very close to critical mass where it goes away, so that if somebody tries to grab it, you can just jump through it and collapse it. Is that true, or?
It depends on the situation. If you don't want to bring any more people in, then yeah, that's what you do. And if you want to bring people in, you keep it like you don't put any mess on the hole, but you have like rolling battleships on the hole ready to roll it at a moment's notice.
So you're holding that hole prisoner.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's fascinating.
Another big key that came out that's really been critical with these kind of things is the yachts. So the Victory luxury yacht, that silly little free ship that came out with one of was it like the Christmas or some sort of holiday patch or something?
It was the tournament that was done at FanFest between Tranquility and Singularity servers, and the winning server, everybody got one of those yachts.
Yeah, so yachts became one of the most ridiculous ways to roll a wormhole possible, because they had the fitting that you could put a oversized prop mod on it, which made its mass balloon up really high. But then it also could fit a Covert Ops cloak, and it was interdiction nullified. Oh. So if the enemy was holding a bubble on the hole and you couldn't get something to roll it, you could just throw a yacht at it, cloaked. They would never be able to get you. You could, and then when you put your prop mod on, the mass would be big enough that it could destroy the wormhole really quickly. So it was actually so broken that they fixed it, where if you had, if you have the Higgs rig on it, you're no longer
Higgs rigs. Yep.
Interdiction nullified.
That's it.
And the Higgs rig anchor makes your mass even bigger. And that's really the only reason you would want that, for a lot of reasons, I feel like, is for rolling holes. So everyone in wormhole space has lots of Higgs.
Yeah, it turns out a lot of the mechanics in the game happen to be used by wormholers and are super useful to us, but were not intended features.
Yeah, doesn't sound like thought of that.
So
like,
the yachts,
rolling floaters.
Yeah, and devoters, the heavy interdiction cruisers are also really fantastic for rolling holes, because when you put up your bubble, your mass gets really small. So you can go through a hole that's about to collapse with very little chance of it actually collapsing on you as you go out. And then you can come back with a big prop mod on, so your mass then balloons up, and there's a high likelihood you'll slam it shut on your way back in and still be in the hole.
Frigate holes do exist, which are wormholes that allow only frigates to come through, like ships with low mass, and devoters or other heavy interdiction cruisers can jump through those frigate holes. And like there is a way to trick the game into thinking your bubbles are up when you jump the hole, because they're at the end of their cycle, then still activating your oversized prop mod on those rolling Hectors, and like getting the full mass through a frigate pretty much, allowing you to close even like the frigate holes, which aren't really supposed to be rolled, I think. Which we did, I think, one time during this eviction.
I was going to say, did you get lucky with a frigate hole not spawning, or did you actually manage to close one?
Oh, we closed it within like half an hour.
Yeah, it was. I was like, come on, frigate holes, and we didn't have a chance to do any.
It's really interesting that for people that question sometimes where CCP's brain at when they're doing a lot of balancing changes, that look at the way that changes for Null Sec that seem totally reasonable are completely unreasonable for Wormhole space. I think it's fascinating. So before you jump on the CCP doesn't know how to play their own game, you got to think about there are multiple scenarios going on with all the stuff and all the mechanics that CCP offers.
Yeah, so getting to the point of trying to get hole control, right? Like, so when there's the frig hole or any other entrance that is difficult to roll or that people aren't immediately rolling, there's a race going on, right? Like, you're racing to hold on for long enough or to close a hole fast enough before reinforcements arrive, or vice versa, that you're trying to get in before the hole can be slammed shut in your face.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's okay. Do you want to continue with the story?
Sure. So then, basically, at this point, the enemy is in our home with all of the. I say enemy, the opposing fleet. I don't want to be super negative. I'm sorry. So the attacking force is in Hydra with all of the wormholes pretty much locked down for us, and we're not able to get a hold of any of them, and they start attacking our structures. The first, they went right for our main Fortizar, Crazy Glue, and then they did all 4 of the Fortizars, and then they started hitting all of our other Aster Houses, Retars, and everything. In the first night, I believe they hit all of them except for like a handful of Astras and our 2 moon mining refineries. And because again, I guess somewhat to our, poor planning, we assumed that, well, if all the timers are at the same time, we have a high likelihood of keeping several of the structures up, even if we lose a couple, which is a really horrible decision on our part looking back on this too, because if we had staggered the timers out, it would have made forced the attacking force to spend many more days in our wormhole, where having them all on the same day basically was like, okay, this is the day, and they can plan better and make sure they have critical mass on that like one day.
I mean, we were actually pretty annoyed by all the timers being, around the same few hours, because it forced us to split our fleet and stuff sometimes, and especially if you were defending those timers, it would have made our life a lot more harder in hitting all the structures. And I think even on day 2, we missed, I think, 1 Raitaru, the armor timer, because we were pretty much committed to a week-long siege at that point, because it was just almost impossible to hit all the structures, so in one weekend because of the same timers.
But yeah, the Fortizars are the critical ones, because those are the ones that you can dock capital ships at, whereas the Astras and everything else you can't really dock caps at. So if you have a Fortizar and someone else doesn't, then that's kind of pretty much game over. You can, but that's about it.
Like, if we had killed all 4 Fortizars and left a few Astra and Raitars alive, would have been eviction over at that point pretty much. We would have just done some chilled out hole control for a week and hit the last timers.
Yep. So our Fortizars ended up their timers came out in pairs, because there is a variance with the timers. There's a plus or minus 2-hour window with your chosen time that you pick when you drop your Citadel timers. And ours came out in pairs. So we had Crazy Glue, which was our oldest and most expensive Fortizar, and Eclipse, which was our newest and least expensive Fortizar, coming out overlapping, actually. There was like a 10-minute window where they were both repairing. And Eclipse almost made it. It was like really close to coming out.
25 seconds.
Oh, I thought it was 20. It was under a minute.
Yeah, it was so close. But in any case, we'll get to that. But then our other 2 Fortizars, Eros and Europa, they also were really close to each other, but then 2 hours after the first 2. But because of these timers, we wanted them to be at a really good time on Saturday so that we could all have our critical mass up. But it meant that the armor timers were at a terrible time for us on Friday, which a lot of us couldn't do anything about. We couldn't take off work. We weren't planning on it. It was sudden. I had my work staff day, which is only once a year, and I absolutely had to be there. So I couldn't take off work. So we pretty much knew that we had to eat the armor timers. We just knew that we weren't really going to be able to contest them. But up until this point, the first night, we were really hoping we could try to get some reinforcements in. And I reached out to ExookiZ, who's one of my longer standing friends in Wormhole space. And I asked him if he'd be able to help out with this and get some ships in. And you can kind of talk a little bit about your role in this, since you also played a big part.
So there was a lot of communication based around trying to get intel and try to. I mean, I guess in the long term, it actually seems like I was almost wrong. I never actually thought that the defenders were going to be able to pull off a stand at the end. I was convinced that was done. So, I mean, and I think Val and Kesk agreed with me where I said, like, well, you've got to get a way in. We've got to figure out when they're going to have a low time zone. We've got to try to bust in and infill some people when maybe they don't have quite as many people there. But I was wrong. Not only did all of those attempts fail spectacularly, I mean, I think I was involved in 3 separate attempts to have a fight and grab the C2. I mean, sometimes we successfully infiltrated people. I mean, I stayed up really late one night because intel suggested that, you know, that the attackers would be low 30s for how many Macarials they'd be able to pull together. So we were like, let's go for it. And I think all the caps got out, but we bled a lot of subcaps with that attempt. I mean, TDSN successfully infiltrated a Sleipnir fleet that was just instantly demolished because I mean, everybody knew from the get-go Sleps versus Macarials wasn't going to end well, but it was kind of the best we could try for. Since given how that, you know, if it's a race against time, even if we successfully roll the hole and start the fight, we have to get a fleet to that entrance that they've got before the defenders can roll it. So Max were just too slow. So we got, in 2 separate occasions, we got some Sleipnirs and Hurricane fleet issues in just for them to die pretty much right on the other side. At one point, we successfully got an exit strategy Mac fleet in, and I think that just died spectacularly right on the other side. In all cases, the attackers had way better time zone coverage than I think we really thought they would. I don't know if that's good.
There's also the factor of how responsive are people, right? You know, you might have 20 people controlling the whole, but if they can ping and get 50 people online within 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you're pretty hosed, unless your fleet is on the ball and is there in 5 or 10 minutes.
And on Friday night, that's what I was like prepping. I was like, okay, we have to hit a surprise time at like a real horrible time zone. So I contacted like the CEOs of Sound and of Exit Strategy contacted me, and they're Australians. So I was like, the Aussies, they can save us. We can get them in. They have time zone coverage. And so I was like, we had to make a play like for downtime. We have to try for it, and we have to do it with, you know, as tight intel as possible so they have no chance to respond and we can just go. And we logged in. I woke up at like 2:30 in the morning. We pinged our fleet. We actually tried to even leave a little earlier than we were expecting because we wanted to have mass Aussie numbers. And we hit the wormhole and we held it for like 20 minutes. And in that 20-minute time, the attackers were able to ping up to like 60 Macarials. I was amazed at
it. It ended poorly for us.
I do like the idea. I do like the idea of the Australians as the cavalry coming in, though. I mean,
it was awesome.
Viktor, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, like that fight was pretty cool. Like I remember waking up to like 4 or 5 pings of like people panicking that like you guys had a bunch of caps on all and stuff, but we managed to form enough people. And I still don't get why you guys actually did log in after downtime, because as far as I know, we had the upper hand when downtime hit, and then you guys just logged in to lose a bunch of capitals. But like the interesting thing about that fight is that after downtime, the hole actually disappeared from like the grid, but was still existed on the other side of the grid for like an hour or 2, meaning the defenders could bring people in while we had no way of rolling the hole. We had to get like pod people out to high sec to get them in rolling battleships and burn through the K space and roll the hole from the other side, which was a bit of a mess.
Oh, that's how you got rid of it finally?
Yeah.
Oh man, it was such a weird bug, because usually, you know, when you collapse a wormhole, it's gone off grid, you get a new signature, you scan it down. This one, as it hit downtime, there were like people jumping in and out of it, and it bugged it out. So yeah, the wormhole on the outside was still there, but the inside it was not. And unfortunately, I mean, we weren't able to really do much with it at this point, though, because it was such a bad time zone for us, and we basically were able to get the people that were potted in that attempt back in like interceptors, and that was about it. We lost a lot in that attempt.
I mean, you got like, I think about 15, 20 dudes getting in from that invisible C2.
Oh, it wasn't that many.
It sounds about right. Like 5 or 6 sound people, 5 or 6 possibly people. That adds up.
Oh, you got more. I only knew that
we got 5 or 6 sound that way.
Yeah, I only knew of like 5 of my guys that got in. I didn't know you guys were also burning for it, because I was trying to see like, can we get some more people in through this weird ass bug? But my numbers, at that point, like I had contacted everyone I could contact, and I had everyone I could get in the hole. And at that point, like that was pretty much my last big plan to try to save my home, was to get that downtime op to work, to get reinforcements and to get the Aussies in with their support fleet, and then resupply. I had a couple people with jump freighters ready to go in high sec, like, okay, if we can hold hull control for just like an hour, we can get it. And I mean, by the time we got the entrance and had the Aussies burning, your ping game was just so strong, Viktor. It was nuts. I have to give you guys mad props for that.
Victor asked why we actually logged back in after downtime, and I think that the best answer to that is we just figured that since downtime eve, like right around downtime eve, plays by its own completely, set of rules, that since exit strategy does it all the time, we might be able to pull it off, since they actually know how to fight with downtime and you guys didn't. But it wasn't enough.
Like, we had our people on our logging screens and stuff, and we logged in like the second the server was up. I think our fleet was on grid before yours was, and then it was pretty much over.
Yeah, the other factor there was we would rather lose the caps honorably than like have you anchor bubbles there and have them be stuck and be killed one by one over days. That didn't make sense.
Yeah, and that was when we lost our vehement in this engagement, and our vehement pilot, he really wanted this vehement, and he spent all his time building it, and he was like, he even bought the skin for it, like the Florida Gators, like blue, white, orange skin. He was so stoked to fly it, and man, it went down in probably the most glorious way you could ever hope for that capital to go down. that was nuts.
It's I'm going back to the Australian as cavalry thing, because if you look at Sin here on screen, he looks like he's riding a horse, like he's leaning back, he's totally relaxed. It's hilarious. I love Australians because I play Pacific time, so that's my first corp was Australian. June, I just realized you're June from Hero Coalition, right?
Yep, one and the same. So that was actually, that eventually wound up being a strength of, I've played in K-Space before a bunch. I know how to coordinate a 200-person fleet. I know how to coordinate 5 or 10 different groups. But kind of, we were muddling our way through it initially because, like, we're not used to working together like this.
Holy crap, I've been wanting to meet you a long time. So I say, I am embarrassed not to know that 1 and 1 equals 2. So
can't take him anywhere.
Yeah.
Valasius, Sin, you wanted to say something?
Oh, no, I mean, from our perspective, so, I mean, it comes back to what we said before. So Amar, when we were speaking about Amar being that central location, so for exit, we could talk about a while about, we formed up not knowing actually which side we were going to take on this side of the fight. And we threw our money at the underdog. We're like, yeah, this is going to be good. Let's go Pos Party. We'll come in. They look like they're in the hurt locker, and we'll form up. So we actually staged an Amar, I think a day or two out. And so we knew we were coming to the fight. We just didn't know who we were coming for. And then it was amazing when they wrestled that initial hull control. We burned, and that's the amazing thing about Amar. Like, you can form up. You're effectively central to the grid. You get that K-space and you burn. But we raced to get there, and we could just hear on comms as they were fighting over this hole. It was pretty cool to get there. And then we took the first wormhole, took the second wormhole, but then wormhole mass, right? Like Mercenaries big. About a quarter of our fleet got through. So we come through, load grid. There is just red and purple everywhere, and we're just like, ah, crap. Decloak, and then it was just, man, the attackers, they were just decimating. Like, there was no time to land Logi. It was just a case of getting exploded. But then, it was that hole collapsed. There's now a new hole. So we then burn, I think, another 24 jumps to get to the next hole, which fell over. And I think at that point, and this is all pre-downtime, we were culminating. Like, our guys had burnt 50, 60, 70 jumps now. And it was a point where we just weren't getting in. The guys that got in would just been slapped around. And it sounded like the ping game of the attackers was strong. They were 70 strong at that point, and we were actually worried that we just weren't going to get in. So that was from our side. Like, we were racing up and down and around high sec, left, right, and center to get in.
Val was the one that also, he's my FC. He was the one that was coordinating a lot of these in-game wormhole things. So I know he could speak a little bit to, like, our fleet kind of as we took the hole. or tried to.
Yeah, with the Vehement specifically, you know, our pretty much total goal was just get at 0 on the max whenever we want to fight them. That was always our game plan. But with the Vehement, he wasn't fully aligned with one of our fleet warps when we pinged, so he got bubbled and got split up. And then I told him to like not siege, just wait. And there might have been some confusion there, but he did siege, and we eventually got like 2 or 3 Nanazas to him, but he was still in siege and died before cycle ended. So that is how the brave Vehement died.
Yeah,
Those
just to
max do
clarify,
so much damage.
Dreadnoughts in Wormhole space are usually active tank fit because like the amount of people you can bring in subcaps is usually barely enough or not enough to break a capital, but in this case the Vehement was buffer fit and was planning on just besieging every time it took damage to get wrapped at the end of siege cycle by effects. It's usually, or that's pretty often how people fit Vehements in Wormhole space.
Exactly our plan.
And man, your max just shoot through it.
It's a lot of DPS.
Yeah,
Well, now Shekel understands the secret to killing Kolko next time they go do that again.
Kolko Collective Company, for those who don't know, is another Wormhole entity, and they are really strong cap pilots, and they drop caps pretty frequently and have a Vehement as well, and it has been effective at several PvP encounters by different groups.
Yeah, so basically, like, you can, even through a C5 connection, you can bring no more than 3 capitals in at once. And so what some groups do, including Coco, is every time like they fight someone at home, they just drop 11 capitals on them. And that's just really hard to fight if you're not prepared or if you don't have your own capitals to fight them or Macarils or whatever.
So the Vehement is a faction dreadnought, right?
Yeah.
Tiberius, you drive one of those Cadillacs. What's that like?
I do. I never take it out. I'm too scared.
Well, and this is the first time we fielded our Vehement. Like, this guy built it just because he really wanted it. I don't know when or if he planned on fielding it, but it's pretty much going to be like in this situation. Like, this was the time. So, you know, with the C4, you can't take your caps out once you build them. So if we're gonna fly him and we're gonna lose him, it's gonna be in a situation like this. And it was nuts. So at this point now, in the narrative, I guess, you know, it's like 4 a.m. for me, and the Aussies, it's like getting really late for them, and they pretty much had to stand down. Like, we couldn't hold whole control long enough to get them in, and they were starting to wane. And we pretty much at that point were like, okay, well, this was a good plan, and we couldn't make it work. We couldn't execute it the way completely as what we had hoped. And at this point, I was just thinking like, okay, here we are. This is it. We're gonna go out guns blazing. I had my Nanazu ready, and I was like, I'm gonna go out with all my reppers on fire in a blaze of glory, and we will make our big last stand, and we will fight, and we're not gonna back down. Because we've seen other groups that, you know, they hit this point where you can't get any more reinforcements in, so you have what you have, and this is it. And then they cave, and they lose their morale, they lose their confidence, and they just kind of give up. And we've seen groups that then at that point just start evacing all their stuff, and they get in like a DST, and they load it full of everything they can, and they log it out in safes, and they try to get, you know, crash VOC holes to get just any assets they can out. But with us, I mean, we had so much that it was just, there was no way we were be able to evac our stuff. So it was like, okay, what do we have? What can we do? Let's get. And so I had all my members, like every single person that was there, basically took all of their assets and shoved it in our public corporation hangars. And we were just basically like, open a trade, have a ship. Like, we were just handing out everything we had. It was like, we didn't care. We're like, can you fly this? Cool, here it is, have a ship. It was like the biggest space communism handout like I've ever had. It was just, if you're in a pod, take a ship. We need everybody in ships.
And we really needed that. We really needed that because, you know, Sound showed up in Sleipnirs the previous night, and some of the Sleps survived, but, like, we were fighting in armor. There's no point in bringing a Slep around to an armor fight, so we just had people hand us ships over and over and over again. We'd whelp one and whelp another one and whelp another one, because for some reason, Shekel wasn't really bubbling the pods. Shekel was focusing on bubbling the caps. So as a result, we just got our pods back out and went back to Fortizar, grabbed another ship.
Yeah, pretty much, like, there were some communication issues because a lot of our, a lot of the people involved were Russian. I think about like 30-40% of the fleet was comprised by Russians who don't speak English. So we had
this is the aggressing force, right, Viktor?
Yes. And so we had like the CEO of the main Russian corporation on our comms, relying information on his own comms, which made for some pretty hard communication on that part with saber bubbling and stuff. And the other problem was we just simply didn't have enough sabers, and they were focused on either bubbling your caps or getting drag bubbles on your caps, so they couldn't warp in on our Macarals at 0. So like we couldn't focus enough on potting people out. So like the whole fight, I think I've killed several people like 3-4 times over during that last stand fight. It was pretty ridiculous.
Well, before we even got to the main fight, we were at our last like level of ships. We were just like, anything armor, take it. Like, and if you can't fly it, here's sabers. Like, we had so many sabers that we were just like, have some sabers for everyone. Everyone gets a saber, like bubbles for days, whatever. And I had one guy that, man, it was like his only job was handing out ships. He was our quartermaster. His name's Budrick. He was a champ. And so when the actual fight started, we basically undocked in our super kitchen sinky last stand, everything we can get fleet. And, we went for it, whatever we have. This is our home. We're going to defend it till the very end, no matter what. It doesn't matter. We're going to have the most epic fight we've all ever had in Wormhole space up to this day. We knew it was going to be big because there were, at this point, when we did a D-scan of the attacking force, I think you tapped out at like 130 Macarals?
In the end?
Victor, was that, for that last big fight, what was your starting Macaral number?
120-ish.
Okay, 120. And then you had a huge Guardian Wing, and then there were support ships too. And we were just like, 120 Macarals. What is going to live? Like, there's no way. They're going to get on grid and they're just going to die.
So that's what's going on with the defenders. They're like going out, guns blazing, preparing to die. What's going on with the aggressors, Victor?
We were just planning on hitting the structures. We, of course, formed as many Macarals as we could, and basically our game plan was just to, because we were pretty confident we could beat their fleet, because we had done so like 2 or 3 times already in the 3 times already with like significantly won the fleet fights. So with the number of Macarals we had, we were confident that we could pretty easily avoid the caps by just burning away from them, sitting out of their range, because the Further grid is pretty big. You just hit the Further while hitting your subcaps. What we didn't expect was going to happen was that they were able to reship so often, and we weren't able to pop them out. So like it started pretty well. We were just killing subcap after subcap after subcap and rarely losing Macarals. But like after a while, their numbers just wouldn't decrease because everyone that died would just reship into another subcap, while our Macarals, slowly died. And that's what was the fight.
The other factor that was different between the different engagements was, in the first couple of engagements, we were really not organized. Like, some people got on Pos Party comms, but like, we were having trouble getting drags. No one was talking to us. People were like, where do I warp? Oh, someone said warp to FC, die in a bubble, right? Like, that kind of basic stuff we stopped failing at. We started actually having people do the logistics role of handing out ships. We started having people step up and call targets. We started having people actually coordinate what we were doing, and I think that made a huge difference as well, of being just less disorganized.
Don't be confused by the temporary identity change people have shifted around down in the video. We will fix that as soon as we can.
I'm using this moment to say that I'm now taking over Exooki and becoming a scary wormhole person.
Yeah.
Oh, who do I get to
coalition? This is exciting.
Oh, I'm still me. Never mind.
One part I want to bring up too.
Yeah, go for it, Val.
So before the fight actually started for the final, first Fortizar fight, there was the we saw the D-scan of 120, 130 max, and Kes is organizing our triage because we only wanted 2 people in triage at a time and the remaining 4 out, ready to ping for us in case we need to warp. And I went down to her, I was like, you might just get alphaed in your Nanazu. Like, there was that many max. And it almost happened with one of our Nanazus. His name was Dire Fires, and he got into structure before his first rep cycle went off. Like, Victor, I think you got him down to about 90% structure in
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And then it was just like, oh my god.
Yeah, that's one of the mistakes I feel we made, is we didn't go for your capitals fast enough, because we could handle your subcap trade. It was just every time your capitals managed to warp on us at 0, we lost a few Macarals before being able to burn off. But like, there were so many capitals in one blob that we couldn't really get like close enough. So I think that Ninazu, when we got him into structure in one go, he was like isolated, so we could get like load close range ammo, get close in, and like volley him down. But like in the other situations, we would have loved to go for your capitals first. But like every time we got in, like we could have gotten close enough to kill your capitals would have just hazed Macarials too. So that was a bit of like our problem there.
Yeah, and that was the other thing that was really on. The other thing that was really on point was the combat probing, right? That was not a tactic we were employing in the previous fights, in that we would just let Macarial snipe us from 70, 80, 90. Whereas in the final set of fights that finally won the engagement, it was getting repeatedly warped onto Macarials at 0 and then being able to wreck 10 Macarials before they'd burn off.
There were just the things about this fight that are so crazy is there were so many moving parts. I mean, both sides, we had so many different things at play. I mean, there were, people getting warp-ins, there were sabers getting bubbles, there were people moving around. We had to worry about the structure timers. We had, that one guy just handing out ships. That was his whole role. Like, he even said, he's like, at first I thought I was going to just miss the fight, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to miss it. And then I realized that this is my job and I have to do this. And you just have to hunker down. And my husband just basically, he was just like, I'm just going to grab every vigilant I can. I think he went through 6 vigilants during that fight because he was like, I'm just going to grab a vigilant, I'm going to web what I can, and maybe I'll take a Macarial down with me. And there's just all these things going around like nuts. And I straight up, I expected to undock and die. Like, that was kind of, I was like, I had accepted my fate. I was like, you know what? Like, we're going to make this a big thing. It's going to be fun. And we're not going to, this isn't the end of us. We can lose they could take our structures, but they can't take our freedom. Like, whatever kind of thing. And, I was just ready to have the most epic fight ever. And then we started holding grid. And I was just like, are we actually holding, like, against this, are we actually like living through these Macarials? Like, what? How is this even happening? And then ExookiZ messaged us again with a defensive, like a reinforcement fleet at this point. And then we had a whole second separate section going on with that of getting him in. So then I had a separate designated group of guys that were like, we can get hull control now. Like, their fleet is engaged. We have to get the holes. We have to get hull control again. So I had another separate fleet of guys that all died that just got in like rollers and Hicks and bombers and stealthy stuff and scanners. I have an amazing scanning guy in my corp that like all he does is scan, and he's like amazing at it. And we got the hole, and ExookiZ was able to get another support fleet in. And we did. We lost Crazy Glue. RIP. The structure died. We weren't able to save it. And that was a big hit. And man, when that thing popped, the grid was lagging out. I was having a hard time locking up anything properly because the broadcasts were like so staggered and they were going so fast and everything. I've never had lag like this in a Wormhole before. It was crazy.
Yeah, I think that further dying was also a thing that was pretty actually bad for us in the end, because like the first furnace of yours contained all the loot and all the ships from AFK people, and I think it allowed you to like reship even more people from like the loot that dropped. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we had people just when they died would just warp to the wreckage of the Fortizar, open a can and grab whatever ship was in it.
On both sides.
On both sides. Yeah.
That was the best. Like, I was watching the stream, and you'd see a pod warp over to the cans, which from the stream, at least that I was watching, like, it was out in the background, and you'd just see blue and orange dots warping over, and then they just come in, and like on the pod, it seemed like I don't know if it was just luck or what. It seemed like most of the attackers were coming back in what seemed to be good ships, but you're watching some of the defenders, and you see these pods warp over, and they just get in a can like, this ship has guns, and they just warp it right back into the fight. And like, I'm talking to like early in it, a bunch of my guys were talking in Corp chat, and he's like, I've died 11 times so far, and I just keep getting in another ship and warping right back.
Beautiful.
And I've been like, I'm sure like on Shekels or on the attackers' comms, I'm sure a thought that goes through some of their heads like, haven't we killed this guy already? When they're like, this guy is prime. We're like, I swear we've killed this one already several times. But one of the things I also want to just kind of mention that really separate, because I'm sure like we talked about all the different things that were going on during that fight. And I'm sure a lot of that can be true for K-Space and Null Sec. But the thing that makes some of the Wormhole stuff so different here is both sides had several people whose only job was pretty much to like make sure no one else included themselves into this fight. I mean, we talked a bit about wormhole control earlier, and I don't know if it'd be fair to say if actually the people that came in towards the end actually even changed it or not. I mean, Viktor could comment on that or not, but just like it's all going on, and we have these people forming and piling up that are like, if we can get in, we're gonna get in on that. And you know, like and it was executed, I think, pretty well. I mean, the attackers had to split their attention between keeping the fort paused, killing the fort, fighting the fight, and now we're at end, you know, reshipping, and they're taking care of all that stuff too. And now we added in, there's now people that are scanning the exit, and they threw rollers at it. They did mass the first hole that we worked on, but they couldn't support the rollers at all. We killed all of them. All their roller battleships jumped over. One of them died on the other side of the wormhole, and of the two that made it back, I think they both died right there, because I'm sure a question mark that they had at one point was, can we afford to devote any materials to going and like killing the like couple ships that are killing our rolling battleships?
Well, let's find out from Viktor what they were thinking.
I mean, the thing was mainly is like we had a scanner and like several rollers on standby just to be flinged to probably their death, maybe not to like the next hole we would find. But like they like Pos Party and stuff, they didn't like close. They had like crit the holes and had like suicide rollers already sitting on them, ready like to close it if someone was trying to get out or get in during the fight. But like the first hour to hour and a half of the fight, like the statics were doing fine. No one was touching them, they were still up. So like people kind of stopped paying attention to them till like, I don't know how long like after the static got rolled we noticed, but it was too long, I think. And at that point, yeah.
They noticed almost right away, because I think it was a spearhead attempt from, I think, mainly a couple of my guys that were in the C4. You guys had a devoter camping it, and so one of our guys found a rattlesnake out of the wreckage of, you know, Crazy Glue's carcass, flew it over and killed the devoter, and then we YOLO'd another battleship that another one had found, rolled it. He rolled himself out. We scanned the next one, and your scanner and the rolling battleships were on it in about a minute to 2 minutes. Like, it was quick. I don't think you guys missed that it was up. The problem was, at this point, we had our own bubbler and our own couple guys there. They landed 15 off the hole in a saber bubble and tried to slow boat to it in Higgs rigged battleships, and one of them didn't even make it. And then, you know, we were able to kill them because they just couldn't get any support. I don't know if there was an actual decision made to just not support them, or it wouldn't surprise me if you guys were way too distracted with, you know, the 100 some odd blinky things shooting at you. But and then we just ran for it. I mean, I was rage pinging. We rolled up 40 some odd dudes and said, we're just gonna drop heavy armor Tech 3 cruisers directly on top of those, latch onto their materials, and keep with them while they're trying to fight everything else going on, which worked the one time we got to actually use it. But
Val, did you want to say something too earlier?
Yeah, there's two parts I want to pick up.
Sure.
Earlier, Viktor was talking about not being able to alpha through our dreads when we landed 0. There was a time when I almost died, and like one of the biggest advantages we had is that I could FC and call from a cap level tank. So there was this one time where we warp in, and they just go for me right away, and I sieged before I got shot, and all of a sudden I'm in like 20% armor within like 5 seconds, it felt like. I'm like heating my reps, taking my exile, I'm like, shit. And like that was almost a fight losing moment right there.
I think you even stopped calling there.
Yeah, I
Yep.
believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember he was just like, someone else has to take over. I'm going to be going down. I mean, there were so many close calls with this fight. This was the most epic wormhole engagement I've ever had. And this fight lasted hours. I mean, we started, the Crazy Glue timer was at 1915, something like that. And I think it was almost by the time the next set of Fortizars came on was when we were finally, like, the dust was starting to settle, and that was like 3 hours later.
Yeah, I think the main thing that happened here that maybe is familiar to kind of Null Sec logisticians and high-level coalition SCs is fights like this revolve around how much can you multitask, how much can you delegate. The person that multitasks and delegates and forces the other person to either do that or die, that's the person that wins.
And it is unfortunate if you're dealing with a language barrier that it really is too bad, because that can definitely just that little extra time needed to like get the translation. I mean, these were second moments that mattered.
Yeah, pretty much. I think in the end, like, no one is really disappointed. We gotta think about 400 billion-isk in assets, so...
What was the final battle report number? Someone had that handy.
It was 569 bill on both sides from all days combined.
Man,
not
it's
including
nuts.
like the Pos and the couple Astras that are to come shortly.
And the loot that dropped from the cans.
Yeah, we're going to be spending a long time trying to sort out all the logistics of those stupid cans. But this was crazy. I mean, with this kind of fight, like, I hope that it gets to the point where it's not about the eviction itself. It's about this kind of crazy content. Like, the eviction is a great way to create this kind of content. That threat is what makes you come to that kind of attack. Like, I was ready to undock and totally lose my fleet and die. And if I didn't feel that threat, it wouldn't have happened, because I would have been like, well, I'm not going to sacrifice my entire corp for just the chance of a fight that's this super epic, because why would I do that? Our ass is going to be totally depleted and it's crazy. But this level of fight is the kind of stuff that wormholers will talk about for a long time. And I don't want it to be like, well, one side won, one side lost. Like, we all took heavy losses. We all had our victory moments. And I'm glad that we still have our home. I'm really happy that, we still get to keep living in Hydra, because, it's our home. Though a lot of people still want us to move to C5 space, then that's a whole nother thing there.
Why do they want you to move to
actually have
C5?
to. It was already
Yeah. So it's kind of a wormhole thing, I guess, but a lot of the big PvP groups are all in C5 space because they have capital level wormhole connections, and you could field capitals on the regular, where in a C4 you cannot move capitals through. So we could field caps, but they can't. And we've done this on a few occasions, and admittedly, we started it a couple times because we didn't have the numbers in order to field a fleet to match some of these bigger PvP entities. So we were like, well, we could field a couple caps and kind of supplement, and then we could take these fights. But then we kind of got a taste of it, and there were a couple occasions where we fielded them a little bit too readily, and
did too many.
And had too many, because of course, then once we say we want a couple caps, everyone is like, I have a cap. Can I do my cap? I don't get to fly my cap. And we ended up with too many caps. And when you're trying to FC a big fight like that, you're just like, I need people. And then you realize, like, oh crap, once they get on grid, like, how many you have, and it's like, well, crap. Like,
I mean, it's not that hard to get like your capital pilots to X up and just pick 3, to be honest. Like, I deal with that all the time because I see most of the fights for ShekelSquad, and we drop capitals pretty often. And I've never had the issue where, like, oh, oops, I have too many capitals. Except like one time, a guy dropped the carrier, even though everybody told him clearly not to drop it, and he just yelled it in anyways while fighting like laser arcs or something. It's not that hard to just pick like 2-3 guys to do the capitals instead of just dropping 8.
I think the difference between C5 and C4 entities is that with C5 entities, everyone knows that there's a cost to bringing that extra cap. Of your caps might not make it home because you collapse the mass, because you frequently are fighting out other people's holes. Whereas if you're in your home, it's a lot easier for someone to YOLO a cap run without, with poor discipline.
I mean, it's like we bring, like, when we have a capital fight, we always aim for just the full 3 capitals, the effects and the 2 threads, we can fit them through. Like, I feel like this is just pretty stupid to just drop multiple capitals on people, because that's like how we start losing our trust in each other. That's how people won't fight in each other's home anymore and stuff. And I feel that's a pretty important part in Wormhole space too. If you just, one corp versus the other, like, you fight honorably, whatever, like, just don't drop a capital up. I think that's a pretty bad thing to do.
It is. You're right.
So there's an etiquette.
A lesson from this whole past 5 days.
I mean, and that's the thing, is that this is one of those, I feel like, our corp, we've been around for 4 years, and we started without knowing anything about wormhole space. I became CEO with like no experience, and we've grown from within. And a lot of that will hit these moments where we all of a sudden find ourselves in like that kind of next tier, and we don't really know how to do that, but we kind of, make some play, or we get big enough and we have enough people to field a certain fleet that we could start being competitive in like another league. And I think then that we just kind of like, we're in this new league, ooh, let's do all this stuff. And we just kind of go for it. We always kind of have that attitude of like, we're going to go for it, and we're going to have fun, it's gonna be great, and blah. and we hit a point where we need to be a little bit more tactical and a little bit more careful about how we operate if we're going to be at this kind of level now. And so, I mean, you know, the growing pains are real.
Keskora, this is a lesson well, this is very interesting because this is really the motivation for the fight. I mean, this happens because you get a bad reputation for living in C4 when you're kind of too big for it and using capitals to defend yourself, which is an unfair advantage. And so then people build resentment towards you. Is that what was happening?
That was one of the main reasons that, like, we used to be on pretty good terms with Pos Party up until 4 months ago, I think. Like, we used to bet on each other regularly and stuff and help each other out. Till one time, like, we had a friendly brawl and they just dropped like 8 or 7, I don't know how many capitals.
It was 6.
Oh, okay, 6.
And in my defense, before the fight started, your CEO told me, I give you permission to blob us. Now,
he said, don't hold back, but like dropping 6 capitals and then hunting us down as we leave.
You're right, Victor.
Like,
it is clearly like wrong of us to do that.
Yes.
And then
that was our mistake.
Like, you guys apologize, blah blah blah, and then like next time we fight in your home or the time afterwards, it just happens again, and everybody got pretty pissed off and fed up by that. Like, that was the main reason our members were pretty pissed off, and Whole Control and Wholesale shared our sentiment, and they wanted to go in with us.
Okay, so that's the motivation for why the fight began, because you're growing bigger than you can comprehend, I guess, or you don't know the etiquette for growing as big as you are, that sort of thing. Things get miscommunicated. The opposition gets mad, saying, "Well, let's take them out." Why did you actually have allies? And let's start with Sin on that one.
Yeah, so from our perspective, like I said before, like we didn't know which side we were going to support, because we aren't necessarily blue, if you like. Like, I guess the blue thing doesn't necessarily exist in Wormholes to either side. So we were like, hey, do we come help the attacking side, which was clearly winning initially, or do we come and sort of support the underdog? So I mean, we're all for content. So it was sort of like, hey, we'll have a lot more of a fight on our hands if we come and support the defending side. So, you know, that was an easy pick for us. It was going to be a good fight, and it was going to be tight. So, you know, our alliance has good pilots, but being AUTZ, we've got minimal people, so we can tend to feel I guess those guys that sort of know what they're doing. So it was good for us to take some of our junior dudes out in what was effectively quite a big fight in a Wormhole space. So for us, Pos Party was the easy choice. They were defending. They were, they had their back to the wall, so it was cool to sort of come in on that side.
So you wanted to help the underdog.
Yeah, 100%.
And June?
So on our side, we've been friends with ShekelSquad before. We've been friends with Pos Party before. The one group that we really had a grudge match with for a while that kind of died off and has kind of come back a little bit has been Wholesale and Whole Control. Because we used to live in C4 space. We used to be C4s like Pos Party and like other groups. So we kind of decided that a year ago, we decided, look, we're going to protect each other from evictions, because all the C5 groups are saying, we want you out of C4 space. We're going to try to evict you, blah, 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 blah. So when we started seeing Wholesale and Whole Control picking on people, or, stating evictions that they thought they could win, which is a more neutral and charitable reading of it, we decided that we were going to intervene where we could, that we were going to help people take Whole Control and provide reinforcement leads. We would try to roll for people. And that kind of culminated about 10 months ago with a C2 hole that we were wrestling over. And then the tensions died off for a while, but when we saw that Pos Party were under attack by Wholesale and Whole Control, we were like, this is kind of a repeat of 10 months ago. We kind of feel that this is not really a super great thing to do, to kick people out of Wormhole space who are active PvPers. So we said, you know what, we'll go in on Pos Party's side. We've been friends with them for a long time, and it's not a diss to Shekel. We liked Shekel, but it's Wholesale and Whole Control that we were mainly not happy with.
And those are the guys that do this often. So what's the uncharitable way to say what they're doing?
I'm a diplomat. I'm not going to say it.
I mean,
boo.
I think it involves sandcastles and feet. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, they're like, the Wholesale and Whole Control is just known for evicting smaller corps for the loot, basically. And that's why a lot of smaller corps are afraid of them and just hate them pretty much.
You've got to admit, it is awesome that when those structures do go down in wormhole space, the stuff drops. Like
I wouldn't have it any other way.
It's a great incentive. It is good for Eve. It is awesome.
Even when it's my own structure, I would not have it any other way.
Especially when it helps us win.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't think any person in Wormhole space would have it another way. I think, yeah, it's one of the reasons Wormhole space is, in my opinion, the best space of Eve.
No, 100%.
Well, I'm going to explore this a little bit longer, and that is that it does seem, I have a friend that was like, oh yeah, this is a terrible fight because it's the little guy getting picked on by the bullies again, and that sort of real archetypal scenario. So it wasn't ShekelSquad that was the bully, it was them teaming up with these other two groups, Whole Control, and what was the other one?
Wholesale.
These guys are the ones that are coming in and raiding, basically. Like, they're legit raiding parties.
Well, I mean, yes and no, because I think you were the ones that initiated this, right? Weren't you guys the ones that led this on? Or was it kind of a joint operation?
It was more of a joint operation, I'd say.
Yeah, and like in Wormhole space, we're all feeling each other out all the time, right? Of what do you think of this group? What do you think of that group, right? And when you discover you have a mutual grudge, sometimes it turns into a joint op, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, we wanted to, we were planning on evicting Pos Party, and we're looking at who can we bring to along, and started talking to Wholesale, and became evident that they were interested in the same. And then from that point, pretty much, it became a joint op.
So was there any money paid for allies on either side?
Not for our side.
Nope. There were talks that we were going to see if we could pay Wingspan to bring a bomber wing in, but they weren't able to make it really. I think we had a handful of them made it in, but not really the full fleet. Whenever, because that was that part of that early downtime play for Whole Control. We were saying if we could get that Whole Control, maybe we could bring in a bomber wing, maybe it'll help. I don't know, and trying to utilize all the assets we could.
And another thing, one of the motivations for Whole Control and the Wholesale to help with this eviction is that both Pos Party and TDSen have tried to evict a member of Wholesale. I think it was a Digital Chess Club was a content tester or tried to evict them. It's not clear yet exactly, but they had a grudge against them, and Vision Inc., one of the Whole Control corps, there was an attempted eviction on them, and TDSen was involved too. So it was one of the reasons for those two groups to get involved too.
Yeah, so you look like Alex was just such a mastermind, laughing at the discussions of him evicting people while petting his cat with his little kraken on his shoulder. Yes, I attempted to evict Vision Inc. Yes.
I actually wasn't even there for that. I have no recollection of the digital chess thing, because I think Prom spearheaded that and then asked us to come, and I was away, but the whole thing was a clusterfuck.
I don't even remember that, honestly. I mean, there was a period of time when we were young, rambunctious wormholers where we decided we were going to try to hit passes to get content, and that was a dark time in our past, and we prefer to not talk about that anymore.
Well, it sounds like it was exciting. I actually was listening into comms for you guys on your side, Keskora, to listen into what was going on, and it was dramatic for a long time. That's a long... Null Sec fights are like, oh, tie-dye, I'll be back in an hour, I'm going to take a nap. And yeah, they're dramatic on paper, but this one was lots of people moving in many directions all at once in coordination, a lot of seriousness, a few jokes. It was pretty exciting for hours and hours and hours.
Especially when we got the warp-ins, those warp-ins. Oh my god.
There was I'm shocked how reliable we were actually able to get at 0 on the max. I don't know, I don't have a total count, but it probably happened around 9 or 10 times. And I'm not, dissing, anything, but there was gaps in the defensive bubbles. You could hear one of the FCs being frustrated in the video by Whole Control released, but between different cans we could warp to, probing, and defensive bubbles that were lapsed in coverage, we got to their fleet at 0 many times.
And especially the more we killed, the more wrecks were on the grid, and the more wrecks we could warp to. So there were a lot of tactics in play, and this is the kind of fights that make Eve special. This is the kind of things that make this game so special, is that, I have been living on pure adrenaline for the last 3 days. And what other game does that? What other game makes you feel this way and makes you bond with your fellow pilots to this extreme amount? And, it's just crazy. It's crazy. And this is this is a weekend that I'm going to remember for a really long time in this game. That's for sure. I'm not going to forget it. And, you know, obviously I don't want to get evicted, but I have to give mad props to the attackers. I mean, they had good plans. They had great hole control. They had good numbers. I mean, I still am kind of amazed that we were able to, you know, save our last 2 Fortizars. I mean, it was just, there were so many pieces going on, and it's just crazy that we can able to like pull up our, you know, pants and just go to work. I was talking with a friend of mine because I needed like a little pep talk from another Wormhole friend, and he told me I needed to Tom Brady it. And I don't know anything about football, so I was like, I mean, I know who he is. Like, he's a football player, right? Yeah. And he was like, well, what Tom Brady does is they'll be down, and then Tom Brady stands up and he decides, I'm going to win now. And he just does it. And he's like, you need to Tom Brady it. And I was like, okay, sure. Why not?
I mean, I went into that fight expecting to lose.
I think Tom Brady just lost the Super Bowl, though, but I get it.
I don't know. I don't know football. I don't know these things.
I mean,
Sports.
I think that's sometimes how it goes, though, because I can relate directly to that feeling, because that's exactly how it went when we were getting invaded when TD Sin was living in a C6, and we had Hard Knocks, Laserhawks, and Quantum Explosion all working to evict us. And we got to that point where we're like, well, may as well just literally take everything we have and throw it at them, even though it's almost guaranteed not to work. And then it kind of did. It's not exactly the same. That worked mainly because this was back in the Pos days, and it was like we took all their dreads down with us. So everyone on all sides was like, well, now that we have to shoot each other's Poses with subcaps forever, let's just call it a day and go home, because that sounded like the worst. But I like that was the exact same feeling we had. Like, I went in expecting that it was just going to be a giant ball of fire, which it was. And I got headshot right away and immediately got potted out. And I'm just sitting listening on the comms while they're calling. And I just remember that point where suddenly you're like, are we somehow winning? Are we somehow doing better than the other team? Is that happening right now? And that's what it looked like it was happening watching some of the stream too, because you know, you're watching dots pinging around all the time. You know, like I mentioned earlier, you had the people that just kept reshipping. And at some point you started to be like, I feel like the attacker's Macarial fleet's getting smaller than it was at the start. And you started to actually wonder if this was actually going to pull together. I was so sure that we were going to save that second fort. But alas, no luck. It was so close. Well, because every time they'd warp, the timer would tick down several seconds, and then I think towards the end, they realized that if they warp away for one more time, that as you landed at 0, that they were going to lose the fort. So they just bled some Macarials for it. But it was crazy.
Thankfully, that was the most recent fort. It was put down like 2-3 weeks ago, Kes. So it's like there was like almost nothing in it.
Yeah, but still, it was still structure.
Yeah.
What was really amazing to me was coming into the fight. Sort of, I think we were maybe 1/3 into the fight when we came in, and hearing Pos Party on comms. Like it sounded bad. Like in the fights, you could tell they were just like they were getting frustrated. Like just super small mistakes and everything like that. And when we didn't get in the first time, you know, I went to bed and I was like, yeah, I guess we're gonna sit this one out. We'll go hit something else this weekend. And I got up at I think it was 5 in the morning. My phone is just like buzzing and buzzing. It's like they've got whole control. They've got this. Like come now. And so I'm like, oh, no time for my plans for the weekend. I came running over. You know, we got on and we got in, but it had changed. Like from being frustrated to being like you could change. Like the morale was just changing. And then it was 12 hours later, you could tell they were starting to get tired. It was just like rambling on comms. It was incoherent. And for our guys, it was quite funny because most of them were starting to get in now. We were fresh. We're in the Australian time zone, but the Pos Party had been up for, I don't know, maybe 36 hours. I don't even know. But it was just but it was just super awesome to hear frustration. And then this morale just picked up, and then they were just like, "Hey, we've got this." Then there was probably a little bit of delusional speak about 5 to 10 hours after that.
You know, it's bad when people start talking about how much they like Nickelback. That was to the low point that we hit.
Delirium, isn't it?
It was bad. It was bad. I'm not proud of that moment. It wasn't me, to be clear. But
all right, so wrap it up for us. Tell us what's next.
So you know, at this point, the big showdown was this weekend with those timers. You know, they infilled They got hull control. They hit the timers. They got them from shield to armor into hull. 2 of them popped, but 2 lived. 2 Fortizars are alive and repaired, and it's now another week until you can hit them again. So the attacking force still has a few structures they dropped in our home as staging citadels. And one of them was low power, and the other 2 were full power, and we hit all of them and put them into their timers. But there's still a pretty substantial fleet logged out in our home right now. So we saw a few of hull control evac this morning. They rushed a hull and got a bunch of their ships out. But there's still, there's still a lot of dudes in our home. So we're gonna, do everything we can to get all of our defenses back up and resupply, and get all our ships organized and get our stuff back in gear so we can keep our hull. But it's not over until everyone's done. And I don't know, I'm not gonna make Viktor tell me his plans, obviously, but at this point it's a matter of what the attacking force decides to do, because we're defending our home and we're going to keep doing that, and that's not going to change. So yeah, but Viktor, I have to say, man, what a weekend.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun so far.
Now, I will say, I really hope you guys leave. we had a really great weekend, and that was fun. It was crazy and epic, but please go home now.
Party's over, Viktor. Keskora has to clean up. You made a mess.
No comment.
Yeah,
That's fine. That's fine.
Not expecting any, so.
So all right, so you guys have any last comments about this fight that you guys want to put through?
For me, it's an interesting.
Tibbs, let's let Valis go because his mic's about to run out of steam.
Yeah, there's just one other thing that some people were asking me about. We had an unfit revelation that came out of build, like the morning of the fight. So you guys saw a revelation warp to a planet. That was bait. I was just hoping that you guys would just chase it instead of the fort.
Came out of the oven.
Yeah.
Tibbs, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, listening to all the stories going backwards and forwards, and the excitement from the battle and the logistics of everything that went on, and just how much of a different world wormhole combat and wormhole fighting is in comparison to. There's a lot of similarities, but there are just so many different considerations that need to be taken into place. And I love the whole, we're staying here and we're going to make sure that you leave before. And we're going to defend our home. I love that whole mentality, and that's something that you don't see very often. And it's really interesting to see this playing out, this whole thing playing out in the background of wormhole space. It's good.
You also don't have a lot of choice if someone is attacking your home properly, because there is no real way of evacuating your stuff. Like, you're gonna lose it all anyways if they're successful, so might as well go out like in a blaze of glory, so to speak.
That was the plan. I didn't expect to come out as well as we did.
No.
So
I would also want to make a quick disclaimer that this is not like your standard wormhole PvP fight, that those go pretty differently, like the day-to-day fights.
Oh yeah,
this isn't a good example of that. This is a prime example of like an eviction, like a proper big eviction.
These do not happen very often. You only hear about these maybe of this size. I don't know, maybe once a year, maybe. These are rare because of so much that goes into it.
Yeah,
because there was one. What was it? It was about a year ago where there was a big eviction from Nova, I want to say.
Nova was 3 years ago.
That was 3 years ago. Damn.
That would be great if we just said, wow, Hard Knocks killed people in Nova. Slippery Pete tangos are fun. Let's just move on to a different topic.
But again, it's those things that you remember. Like, you remember Nova because of that. And we'll remember Hydra. And, it's going to be how it goes.
This sounds like it was a proper attempt and a miraculous defense, and everybody's still smoking from all the fire that was going on. These things happen every year or two, but sometimes they're less contested than this. Sometimes it's it could be a bigger loss mail or whatever, but it's a lot less contested. This went back and forth.
There's plenty of evictions that go on. Just very few of them are really newsworthy. I'm sure if I went scrounging, I could find no shortage of corporations that have been evicted over the past couple months. Many of which put up no effort to defend themselves whatsoever. They just undock all their ships and on their Fortizar, and then they say mean things to you in local until their Fortizar blows up.
Yeah. Well, this is exciting to watch. I had my own experience with it in that I decided that it was a good time to use some money that I had sitting around for a good cause. So I was like, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll try to actually ask a few friends of mine to see if they could, help Keskora, because Keskora is part of our staff. So I got to help her out. This show is not neutral. Like, everybody thinks the show is neutral. It's not neutral. It's just that we incorporate everybody's bias as much as possible. But Keskora being one of our panelists, I thought I'd help her out. And in my grand wisdom, I asked, Null Sec FCs if they wanted to jump into Wormhole and help out. And they all looked at me saying, you know how we work, right? Which was humiliating. I was like, yeah, you ask guys if they want to, fight. No, that's not how it works. Null Secers don't go into wormholes. In fact, Test doesn't even have a Wormhole group. Goons don't have a Wormhole group. NC doesn't have a Wormhole
actually, do you think?
They keep losing them, right? Like, the thing that happens is wormhole politics are so different from null sec politics. Your ability as a wormholer to affect null sec politics or vice versa is so low that you wind up drifting apart, and that's natural and it happens. So, as someone who's made the transition from null sec to wormhole space, I can say I really like wormhole space a lot, and I hope that stuff like this inspires some people to come join us, because it's a small community. It's a really great community. And we'd really love to have you in it if you're listening to this and thinking about, am I interested in getting this kind of fight? Am I interested in being in a small group where like 30 people is the largest fleets get?
If you're looking for the intense, group and brotherhood experience, this is a different world for sure. I think Null Sec, you can sit back and do your own thing and relax, and which is probably why a lot of the the weekenders or in Null Sec or whatever. But if you want to be part of a team, going spelunking and all that kind of stuff, it's Wormhole is a different, from what I've seen as an observer, a different beast altogether. But I have to cover this because I got to give Tiberius a chance to make fun of me. In my haste, after being turned down by everybody I knew for a favor, which I totally understand, by the way, I'm not bitter about it, but it was kind of sad. I thought, well, I'll do it myself. So I gathered my jump freighters, one from NC territory. And since my alts can't park in NC territory, I had to use an NC alt, who jumped to a trick Fortizar, which is the oldest trick in the book. And I knew it, but it was early morning. And it got plucked and killed. And in the process, I thought, well, I'm Matterall, so I'm going to throw out my Matterall card. And that didn't buy anything. And I was like, all right, well, as long as I'm going to die, I might as well test, do these guys still, have, what do you call it? Do they still accept ransoms or whatever? And the answer is no, they don't accept ransoms anymore. So I lost more money that way.
They take it, but they don't honor it.
They take it, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Never pay the ransom when they've got you tackled.
They'll charge you, but so the point is, it was like a humiliating experience, but I did manage to finally get three other jump freighters full of Macarials and fittings and stuff over. And that's why I was hanging around listening to comms, trying to figure out when I could move I was gun running. So I was trying to figure out when I could move the guns in and stuff. And that was actually pretty cool to listen in on these guys from an outside perspective. I hate this game.
And yet we have people that win at it by quitting. Sadly, rip Noobman.
Yeah, and we have to comment. Noobman, who has been our beloved Wormhole CSM. What are you doing, ExookiZ? I don't know. But Noobman has officially won Eve. He quit to Ardnox and is now taking time off from Eve. His real life has hit him, and he's been really busy. And I know I'm pretty good friends with him, and I love the guy. And I know he's just been crazy busy. And it's sad to see that he's not going to be in game anymore. And I'm going to miss him.
The CSM seems to do that to people. Like Eliaris from Sound quit because of the CSM.
Well, ExookiZ, you're running, so you best not quit on us now, all right?
Don't worry, I'll stick around, I promise.
It's taxing. And to answer a question, what's a trick Fortizar? Because I do want to give this up. First of all, I want to say never, ever pay snuff a ransom because they're not going to. Maybe somebody else, but never pay them. And I know of them, so it wasn't a surprise. But I wanted to test theory because I used to pay ransoms back in the day, and people would honor them. And but that's how long it's been since I've been captured. Second, a trick Fortizar is there's these Fortizars that are free ports. And so people will put up a free port with the exact same name and even a corporation with a very similar name. So when you look info, it looks like it's them, but it's not. So what happens is when you park your Sino in there, everything's fine. When you undock your Sino and light it, that very second, somebody switches it to no longer free port. And so you're locked out of it. And so when your freighter lands, really like 5 seconds later, it's already trapped. And that's what that trick is. So free ports are very dangerous business in low sec, especially for jump freighters. I recommend that, and maybe that's the project I get involved with, is trying to make free ports actually free where people can travel and stuff like that. I don't know. I got to put
the Phoebe Freeport Republic. What was that? The group that wants to build the free ports.
Or make NRDS more of less of one region and more of a concept among free ported keep stars or something. So maybe I'll buy a bunch of keep stars and start sticking them in certain places, and then ensure that people actually can travel free. I don't know.
Man, if you are buying a bunch of keep stars, you have way too much money and you're not giving me enough.
Actually, it will be fundraised. I'm not going to buy them myself. Anyway, but this was like a great program about wormhole space. So I want to thank you guys for showing up today. You guys have any last messages you want to give out before we go into meetups and stuff? Okay.
Oh, man. I mean, we could talk about wormholes for hours, but it's just...
Don't worry, we'll be talking about this exact topic for a while at some point in the very future. As soon as I hear back from Steel and Vec, I'll be doing a very deep dive on this weekend on my podcast.
Oh, that's right. And also, this may not be over. Viktor hasn't said it is or isn't here, and I'm sure that might happen again, or who knows. But it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds for the next few weeks. All right, Tiberius, can you take us through meetups?
Yeah, I can. Couple of stuff coming up. Of course, we got FanFest coming up in 1 month time. So I'm sure everybody's going to be having a good time. It'll be my first time in about 4 years that I haven't gone to this one. Sad times, but a lot of people I know are going. I know they're all going to have a great time. But in the meantime, if you can't make FanFest, you do have G Fleet holding their Stammich Dusseldorf Bar 95. That's next weekend. On the 17th from 5 p.m. You got a meetup in Vegas on the 17th of March at 5 p.m. That's at the Copper Keg Bar. Go check that one out. Apparently, it's also St. Patrick's Day, so apparently they have green beer in America. This is a novelty to me, that's for sure. And then the meets start kicking off. There's a German meeting on the 11th of April in Reykjavik at the Bruggen Brew House, which is in the basement of CCP's office. Then we have a Microsoft Dev Meet. If you're a programmer, love EVE Online, love new technology, love to talk about over a couple of burgers and beer, that's again in Reykjavik. That's at the Common Hall for everybody that goes to Iceland, which is the Nora Bar. Then the Tweet Fleet meet makes a return in Reykjavik as well on the 11th of April. It's an annual thing that happens. Loads of people generally turned up at that one. That's at the Gukarin Bar in Reykjavik as well. So if you're around that way, go check them out.
And Keskora, you have a meet?
Yeah, the EVE retreat I'm planning. It's in the Midwest. It's May 31st through June 3rd. We still have tickets available. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a little small, but it's going to be a good time. So if you want kind of a chill, fun, easygoing meetup, it's going to be a good one for you.
And where do we find out more information on that?
everetreat.com. I can also post information in the Talking Stations Discord if anyone's interested.
There you go.
All right, and Los Angeles. If you're in Los Angeles, where I'm at, I want to have some kind of a meet to meet EVE players and people who watch the show. I'll have Lady Scarlet there, probably Carneros. Maybe we can get the Space Pope since he's in the neighborhood, and a few others. Oh, actually, Gobbins is moving the area, so we may have him, and even if it's timed right, Wind Spirit from Chinese server. And okay, so we're going to put that together, waiting for it to get a little warmer. So next week, we're going to talk to CCP tech team, and that we're going to have Snowden. I don't have their names handy, but they're going to be Snowden, CCP Snowden, and another guy. We're going to talk about ESI, SSO, and API stuff. And that is, for all the people who don't know, third-party connection points to the client. And we're going to investigate and talk about, like, what powers are you actually giving away when you give your corp your full API? Because it's pretty interesting how much you are giving away. And also, we were going to have Fraternity CEO Wind Spirits on today, but we decided to move that to March 25th. Thank you for being flexible, Wind Spirits. And so we'll talk to him about the rising Chinese tide, as they call it, on the 25th. And then April 1st, we'll be talking to Ghost Legion as he takes over from the defunct NETC. That's what's going on there. I'd like to thank our producer, McLeod, engineer, actually, and webmaster Keskora. Thank you, Keskora. And subscribers and supporters. So Laughing Man, Poison Fury, Condor, and a few guys tipped $1 to probably put a message up. Thank you guys for the $1. The station loves that. And if you want to know more about Talking in Stations, go to talkinginstations.com, where you will find back issues and more information on the staff and where they come from and all that kind of stuff. Right. I want to thank guests, Valasius, ExookiZ, June, Ting. It was really nice to meet you. And Sin and Tiberius and Viktor. And of course, Keskora. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
It's a great wrap up. Great fight.
Have a good one, everybody.
And that'll be all for us. And we will see you next week on Talking in Stations.